with Michael Williams.
A new report says sea levels are rising because of global climate change. And one of the report's authors says it is not something to think about for the future. He says it is happening right now in Florida. Good morning and welcome. One of the men warning about the effects of climate change is a national expert, and he is our guest today. Leonard Berry is a professor at Florida Atlantic University, where he is also coordinator of the Climate Change Initiative and the director of the Florida Center for Environmental Studies. Sir, thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure.
Some months ago, the National Climate Assessment came out. You helped author the portion of that involving the southeastern U.S. Talk about, in essence, what the report is laying out for us.
The report is really trying to summarize what we know about climate change
and what do we
in
know?
General. And what we know for sure is that temperatures are warming, have warmed. Something like a degree and a half globally. Over about 100 years. Most of that in the last 50 or 60 years. And although that's an average, it's a lot more in the Arctic area, which is like 6 degrees. And it involves the land and the ocean. And the ocean is the important part.
Talk about that, because the ocean's always been a sink to help absorb some of the temperature changes and it's been a heat sink, but even the ocean can only absorb so much, correct?
Well, simple physics. The ocean absorbs not only the carbon, but it warms. It absorbs the temperature increase. And things that get warmer expand. And so up to now, most of the change in sea level, which is one of the impacts of climate change, has been the expansion of the ocean simply physically because it's warmer.
Let me ask you, to the non-scientists, you say a degree to a degree and a half over the past century. People say,
it's not much. And
why is it so much, though?
But it's real important. It's important because in critical areas like the Arctic, that difference means less sea ice, more melting of glaciers, more contribution of water from glaciers to the ocean. It means a change in the whole dynamics of the atmosphere. How
quickly are glaciers receding, both there and in the Antarctic?
Well, that's what we found out and why the last assessment is different from the previous one. We're finding out that glaciers are receding faster than we thought. It varies from one place to another. But the most important thing that we've really found out in the last year is that the Antarctic is now a major potential contributor to this problem. And it's hard for people to conceptualize how much ice is locked up in these glaciers and therefore when it melts, what it can mean for sea level rise. If all the ice melted, sea level would be something like 80 feet higher than now. Which we're not suggesting. Which we're not going to happen. No, that's certainly not saying that will happen. But first of all, talk about behind this, scientists like you are absolutely 100% without any shadow of a doubt convinced that carbon-based fuels are the primary driver of this. Is that true? That's true, because fortunately we've had scientists measuring the amount of carbon in the atmosphere for the last 50 or 60 years. And the pattern is absolutely consistent. It increases every year. The average was 280 historically, parts per million. We crossed the 400 parts per million this year. And what do you think the final tipping point is? And it's something like 450? Or yes, 450 to 500 is regarded as a critical point in terms of temperatures. How much temperature rise, how much more temperature rise can we expect in this century if things continue relatively unabated? We're talking about 1 to 2 degrees centigrade, which is 3 to 4 Fahrenheit. And that is a conservative or midline estimate? That's midline estimate. And a conservative or midline estimate based on all the science that we know, and by the way, the National Climate Assessment and an international report that mirrors, it's the work of how many scientists? 250. Who are climate specialists? No, that's the National Climate Assessment. And the international report's 3,000. And that's all people who have expertise in climate science. Yes. What will it mean for South Florida? For Florida? For South Florida?
this topic?
Michael, from my point of view, it doesn't matter what the cause is. It's happening. We're measuring sea level rise. We're experiencing greater extremes of weather. We're dealing with drought. Those things are real current events. And you and I can debate what the causes are and what the future is going to be. But any prudent individual, let alone a scientist, would say, what can we do now to prepare for a more uncertain future?
And let's let you jump off on that point. You've talked about it. Weave it all together for us here in Florida about what we must do to put together a future for our children and grandchildren, given the uncertainties that you say are part of rock-solid science, whatever their cause, man,